I have to be more than a mom.
Yeah, like the perfectionism part of it. It's like, oh, like I have to get up every day at 6 a.m. to go to the gym. Oh, I have to meal prep every day of the week. Like, you know, like I'm trying to like find the balance with that so that it's like, if there is a day where Arden was up for 3 hours in the night, like I can give myself grace in the morning without using it as like an excuse for why it's like sabotaging everything I want to do with my life. Welcome back to another episode of Smashed Oranges. If you haven't already done so, please like and subscribe to us at Smashed Oranges. It really helps us keep bringing you new, fresh content every week and growing our community.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Yeah, so today we're going to dive into the topic of identity and how that shifts after motherhood. Full disclaimer, we've tried to record this episode like 4 times now and have either lost it due to technical issues or I think it's mostly just been tech issues.
Mostly just that.
But I'm a firm believer that like what's meant to be will be. So if we're losing stuff to silly tech issues, it's because it's just not supposed to be in the world. So fingers crossed today's episode.
And it's been interesting too to watch our own versions change as we try to re-record it. So it'll be interesting to see where this conversation leads us today.
Yeah. So in some of the past episodes, we were just talking about how when you become a mom, there's like a moment where you have this brand new baby in the world and you're at home alone a lot and you kind of get lost in that. Yeah. Was my experience anyway. I felt like I didn't have anything to like cling on to that was mine. Nothing that was happening outside of just raising a baby that felt like it was mine. Mm-hmm. It just very much felt a little bit like Groundhog Day, doing the day-to-day tasks, changing diapers, feeding, wake windows, maybe showering, you know? Like,
take care of yourself.
Yeah, and so for a good while postpartum, I just felt a bit of like a shell.
Yeah.
You know?
You know how I heard it described by somebody? It's this girl I've followed for probably over 10 years by this point, probably like 15 years.
Yeah.
And she's got 3 kids now. When I started watching her, she's a YouTuber. Her name is Sarah's Day. It's her channel. Yeah. And when I started watching her, she was a teenager. Now she has 3 kids. And she described it. She's been through the ringer with her last. And she said she feels like a flower that's lost its petals. So it's just like the little inside of the flower bud. Yeah. And all the petals have fallen off. And I was like, girl, I feel that. Because you feel like all these parts of you that make up who you are suddenly lost. And all you have to do is like that inner circle ring purpose, you know? And I don't know about you, but I felt like there was like this great expectation that I would suddenly be fulfilled by motherhood. And I wasn't. Did you feel like that, like right out of the gate?
I mean, the first month, the first 2-3 weeks, I did feel like that because it was really fresh and new. And
it's exciting.
I had a lot of support those first 3 weeks. A lot of people were dropping in, saying hello, bringing by food. It felt really exciting. And then kind of into that 4, 5, 6 week mark, it started to feel a bit lonely.
I agree with that. Yeah, you're right. At the beginning, it's a little bit, I was in a little bit of a bubble.
Yeah, so was I. And I think I had that hormonal like glow happening. I was like, oh my gosh, like the trees are so beautiful and the birds are chirping and I can do anything. Yeah. Definitely the I can do anything after childbirth is a real thing.
Oh, 100%. I love that part of it. That's why I'm so excited for birth number 2. Like, I'm going to feel like Superwoman again.
Yeah. For a few weeks and then I'll be crying.
And then reality will hit and we'll try to struggle through it again.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think a big part of it for me too was just before having a kid, I was super involved at work. Yeah. You know, like workaholic, was probably using work as like a means of numbing out a lot of emotions. And I've talked about that, but yeah, so not having that. And then also I was still dancing quite a bit right up until like I performed in a show at 8 weeks pregnant. And then not having that anymore, in the sense that I just felt like my body was not capable of dancing the way I used to dance, was really hard on me. And like, I don't even think I was willing to acknowledge that up until maybe just the past like month or so.
Wow.
But like how much that affected me.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you shared a little bit personally with me that Omari has been really supportive and said, why don't you try going back to dance and stuff like that? So how has that felt in the last year?
I still... He does say that all the time.
What are like some of the emotions that come up when he asks?
Anger.
Oh, interesting. Mm-hmm. Why is that, do you think? Is it because he doesn't like realize how much it's changed for you?
Not even anger at him. It's just like anger in general. Like I just feel like there's so many layers there for me, you know, where it's like, I described it to a friend of mine who's a singer, and I was just saying, like, it'd be like if somebody, like, you couldn't sing tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Like, that's how you express yourself, right? Mm-hmm. So for me, it was like, oh, I can't move anymore. I mean, I'm getting back to moving slowly now, but, like, I tried doing, like, a split jeté the other day, and I was like, I could do it, but I landed and was kind of like, my pelvis just feels really wobbly, and I'm trying to recorrect my body patterns right now. Has been what I've been working on in the gym and at home with like foam rolling. I think that's a combination of, improper training at like dancing for a few years, and then also childbirth. Just
interesting. Do you mind like going a little bit into like what it is that you're trying to fix?
Oh yeah, I have like crazy sway back lumbardosis. Oh, is that what it's called? Like, what is that called?
Oh, anterior pelvic tilt.
Anterior pelvic tilt. Mine is super bad.
Yeah. Oh,
like my quads and my hip flexors are so tight, and my hamstrings are super weak.
And do you get a lot of back pain from that? Lower back pain.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Yeah. So that's not super fun.
Yeah, and that's a hard one to fix too. Like, I mean, like, purposefully as you're going about your day being like, oh, and tilt. Because for our listeners, if you can see us, like a pelvic tilt, anterior pelvic tilt would be like your belly button is kind of pushed out forward, and then your hips, I'm not explaining.
I can just stand up because mine is super obvious. I don't know what angle is best.
Yeah, like that.
Like so. Okay.
So at the front of your pelvis, so like if I like headlights,
I'm just gonna try to like not think about, if I just stand normal, like this is me like trying not to like I don't want to like obviously stick my stomach out, but like this is like swayed in the back.
You got a much deeper curve in your lower back, and then the front of your pelvis is almost like tilted down towards the ground.
And this was exacerbated from C-section because they cut this way and you lose that lower ab. So like now if I engage my lower abs and I think about it, and then like think about not using my quads to do that, my glutes, and just using the abs here to lift, this like shifts.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But then if I'm like walking like this, and I do like a full extension of my leg, like I can feel this hip flexor like
super tight.
Oh, it's so tight. Anyway, so that's part of it too. Like I don't want to rush back into like crazy dance training because I know that those muscular imbalances are just going to get worse if I do that, because that's what is going to fire first, right? Is like the muscles that are already overworking.
And so you kind of feel like if you were to go back, it wouldn't be the same person. Like you're not the same person mentally, but you're also not the same person physically.
Yeah. And I also feel right now too that like, because I'm not where I was physically, to like go back, like hypothetically speaking, like if I was to go back to training with the company I was training with, I just like don't feel like there's like space for me there right now in the physical condition I'm in. Mm-hmm. Because I just don't feel like I can keep up, you know?
Yeah. That's hard.
And then there's like fears too about like going back to that too, because I don't know, like being a mom just like changes so much in your life, you know? And like, I feel like I'm still integrating my identity in a way, because I feel kind of that first 6 months, I feel like my identity was just non-existent. Like I felt so lost. Mm-hmm. And then I feel like I started kind of rebuilding the blocks.
Yeah.
But I feel like
you kind of had to find your base again.
Yeah.
Like your new foundation was being laid.
Yeah.
And then you could rebuild on top of that, like who your new existence was and
what and I feel like within that too, like if you think about it like a brick house, I feel like the house got taken down, and I feel like I'm trying to rebuild it using some new bricks and then some of the old bricks.
Oh, that's a good analogy.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to figure out like which bricks still fit and which ones don't.
Yeah,
because with me, like, if you want to use dancer as part of my identity, like identifying with being a dancer, like that's like the umbrella category. But within that, like I feel like I was a dance teacher and a dance teacher within different genres, and I was a performer and like a performer within different genres too. And then like there's different dynamics that happen with like different people within that, like I had a different relationship with like each one of my students and all like the parents I was interacting with at the time, and then like other company members that are also adults within like the dance company I was in. Like all of those dynamics also contribute to my identity. And so I'm just trying to sort through kind of like what still works from that part of my life and like what parts don't.
Yeah. I feel very much the same way right now because I just finished my maternity leave and I submitted my formal letter, I guess. Yeah. That I wasn't going to be going back full time. And with my job was very similar in that I had very different dynamics. So many different people. I was teaching a lot of different classes. I was a personal trainer. I was teaching courses to train instructors, things like that. So we were both very involved in a lot of different people's lives. Yeah. And when I was pregnant with Poppy, I talked to my therapist about why I was concerned about being a mom and like losing that part of myself. And it was interesting because she asked me what the values were behind like those jobs and like why it was actually important to me. Yeah. And so, through some like discussion, you have to really dig through like, okay, it's not just the act of like going to work or like, it's not just the relationship I have with this person. It's why is it important to me? Oh, well, I appreciate that I can acknowledge that I like being the person that knows something. Yeah. Or like, is a confidant for somebody. And I feel like they feel more confident with the instruction that I'm giving them and I'm expanding their lives and, that like all that sort of stuff. And so fast forward to now. So I've submitted I'm not going back to work full time, but I've decided I'm going to go back to work part time just until this new baby arrives or as long as I can. And part of that was like, okay, what are some of the things that are bringing me back? It's obviously not going to look the same way anymore, but it's going to be some of those values that are integral to who I am. Like I want to be part of my community. I want to share some expertise. I want to be somebody who can, make somebody else feel confident in the gym and yada yada. But it is tricky to navigate that because even though your internal values might be same, kind of what you're saying, your priorities are also shifting a little bit. So even though those values might be the same, you might be saying, okay, so this is my internal value system. Yeah. And I want to apply it in some other way that works better in my life. Yeah. And I think at that point, it kind of leads to a little bit of, we've talked about some grief aspects of that. Yeah. But it was interesting because you and I were talking earlier and you've kind of shared that you're arriving at this place where it's an expansion of who you are now. I think... Do you mind sharing a bit more about what that looks like?
This is honestly, I feel like this kind of thought pattern is still downloading for me.
Yeah, of course. It's still new.
But I feel like there's part of me that is scared to get back to not even back to, because I don't feel like I'm going back to anything. I feel like I'm like moving forward. Like I feel like there's part of me that's like scared that like there's like a bit of an internal dialogue that sounds like I just don't know if I'm capable, And I feel like I've been using just like the changes in my body is like an excuse for like why I can't do certain things, Yeah.
So do you mean like you're scared to go back because you just don't think you'd be able to fulfill those roles in the same way?
I mean, like part of me, like there's part of me that's like scared to go back to like training dancing kind of in a similar way that I was, because I'm scared I'm not going to like live up to my expectations in that regard.
Oh, yeah.
But also just like yeah, I feel like there was a while postpartum where I just felt like so in the trenches and the thick of it, and like I was never going to be anything besides just a mom. And then just like now I'm trying to figure out like, I guess just like strategies and ways that I can be more than a mom.
Yeah.
You know? Like I'm trying to figure out strategies in ways that like, oh, I could go back to training dance full time, or oh, I could build a podcast business, like a podcast, and then like somehow figure out a way to like monetize said podcast to gain a bigger following, and like ways to get back to training in the gym more often, and like ways of finding accountability to like be eating cleaner all the time or more consistently, you know? And just also finding the balance between not falling so far into the
I have to be more than a mom.
Like the perfectionism part of it. It's like, oh, like I have to get up every day at 6 a.m. to go to the gym. Oh, I have to meal prep every day of the week.
Oh,
like, you know, like I'm trying to like find the balance with that, so that it's like, if there is a day where Arden was up for 3 hours in the night, like I can give myself grace in the morning without using it as like an excuse for why it's like sabotaging everything I want to do with my life.
Oh, Maddie, this is totally something I've been thinking so much about lately too. And this is why it's exciting to talk about it, because like, oh, I feel like this in my soul.
Yeah.
But I've really enjoyed people's content who like, or bring it back to reality. Be like, you know what? There's a time and a place and like a season for it. Because I think it's a lot to do with like what we're consuming too, right? Because I've noticed in myself, I get super depressed when I watch like old fitness, not old fitness stuff, but like other people's fitness content. Yeah. Or like, you know, these are the things I'm doing to make my 2025 the best year ever. Yeah. And it's, like either I'm waking up super early, I'm like, my structure is so nailed down, And I think there's empowerment to that. I totally believe that like if you put your mind to something that you know will be beneficial to your life, that it could you could reap the rewards. Yeah. However, once the pressure to do that overstrides like the benefits of it, I think that's when we have to take a look at ourselves and say like, okay, is this going to work in the season that I'm in right now? Because I know for myself personally, like I'm not going to be getting shredded or like lifting PRs or like hitting the gym consistently every single day. Yeah. For a lot of people, they'd say, no, I should be setting that goal. That's what I want to be doing. And yes, I do want that. But I also recognize that there's going to be days where either timing doesn't work, you know, I couldn't get a slot to get child minding, so I couldn't go during the day, and then the evenings are busy and you know, that sort of stuff, where I'm not feeling well physically because I'm still pregnant. Yeah. You know, all these things. And so I appreciate that you brought that up, that there's like this pressure within ourselves to act a certain way or like live a certain way, when it's like maybe this is like a year or two down the road and I could really thrive there. But right now I'm going to pick one or two things that will help me move forward right now and will give me a little bit of validation and encouragement. That's something actually. So we said it in our last one of the last episodes where we talked about my experience being pregnant with the second time, and I mentioned how I was going to be meeting with my therapist. So I did. So this is something that we talked about. Yeah. Was I ironically too in one of the episodes you had asked me if I struggle with not doing, and then my therapist had asked me the same thing. I was like, well, that's a sign.
I'm no specialist.
But we'll give you kudos for that one.
Just a casual observation, but maybe.
Yeah, but she totally brought that back to the forefront, and it was really validating, because she knew me when I was pregnant with Poppy, and again, she was walking me through my value systems and like why certain things were important to me. And she said that I think you're giving yourself too much of a hard time when you're trying to rest, that it's not giving you any rejuvenation. Like you're not actually resting. So when you're feeling sick and you're lying on the couch, or even if you're like doom scrolling, like a lot of us just like scroll to numb out a little bit, right? Yeah. If you're doing that, but then you're also thinking, oh, I'm such a bad person, I should be doing this, I should be doing that, you're just giving yourself grief that whole time, then you're not receiving any restorative benefits. Right. Realistically, scrolling is not the best thing for your brain. It's not actually giving you any restoration.
Do you want to know something disgusting? If you were to pull your phone out and close your eyes and start scrolling and just listening to it, it'll make you want to scream.
The like overstimulation of just like all these different
all
noises
of just like the noises like switching.
Yeah.
Without like landing on one thing.
Oh yeah. Well, and think about like how much work your brain is doing in that moment to try like anyways. So yeah, she just like reminded me that you have to pick a couple of things that will help you basically find that rest. Yeah. Right? So like, okay, you have to recognize that you're not gonna be able to clean the whole house every day, or like you're not gonna be, I don't know, that was my biggest thing. I was like feeling really guilty for not doing a lot of housework or like being super present during the day. She says, pick one room where you can clean it, and then you switch a room every day or something. Yeah. Or you pick one activity that you're going to do with Poppy and you do that. And then when you rest, and you say, I have done enough. This is what I set to do. Yeah. And I'm doing it. And you keep your expectations of yourself very low. Yep. And then you start to build off of that, because another thing I really appreciate, I really love the term, I don't know, self-efficacy, which is basically the confidence that you're building in yourself because of the proof that you can do something. Right.
This is where I'm at right now.
Oh.
Is that. Because I feel like I can swing from kind of what you were saying. Either drives Omari nuts. He's like, why do you have to deep clean the whole house? Why can't you just tidy it and leave it at that? Anyways, so I feel like I swing between either doing everything at 110% or doing nothing at all.
Same.
And so I'm really trying to find that middle ground. And like you were saying, that building the self-confidence by proving to yourself you can do it is really what I'm sitting with right now, because I just feel like the last year and a half, I've been having a hard time with that part of it, like believing I can do the things.
That's such a shame, because it's amazing to see where you've grown from here to when you got a newborn, right?
I know.
I think we forget that.
We do forget it. Yeah.
Yeah. So we as mothers need to do a better job of giving ourselves credit where credit's due, because even when you feel totally incapable or like you're doing a crap job, you have to rewind and say, you know what? Yeah. Even if it's covering your child's basic needs that day, like, dang, you're a great mom for covering your child's basic needs, but you more than likely have done more than that, you know, and even just like the extra mental labor of wondering how they're doing and hoping or making their favorite meal or, you know, giving them some validation. Yeah. Like, we have to give ourselves that, you know? And I think that's part of our, like, the point of the podcast today is our identity as mothers, how that changes and ebbs and flows, right? Because I think when I was pregnant with Poppy, at least I was super worried about what I was going to be like as a mom and how like all these things would change.
What parts of your identity, like if you could try to summarize, like what parts of your identity do you feel like have changed, and then what parts of your identity do you feel like have expanded, and then what parts do you feel like are brand new?
How do I wrap my head around that question? I feel like a lot of the values that I kept near and dear that were fulfilled with like work things, you know, so being a source of credibility, being a source of not confidence, what is it? Basically, I guess like encouragement, a source of encouragement is more so, I think, the word. And being connected with people. I think those three things are really important to me and fulfill me a lot. Yeah. And I think I've maintained those with a lot of different things. Either I'm involved in my church, or we've started our podcast and we're trying to expand our communities elsewhere. I've joined like some local Facebook groups for moms and like had messaging with all these different new moms. Like I said, I'm going back to work. I've continued to go back to my regular gyms and just like see people that I've associated with and all those things, but also that has expanded to now my daughter and my family, right? So now I want to teach my daughter all these things. I want to show her the world with her brand new set of eyes, you know, some beautiful things, and like, you are confident, you are smart, you are capable. And so that's a really cool part of motherhood that you can bring into your child's life. You are the creator of what your child's beginning life will look like. And so that's both empowering and really scary. But it helps me see life with a new set of eyes as well, and say, okay, how can I make this beautiful for her? Or how can I, share a life lesson that will, even at her young age, she'll be able to grasp it. You know, like even if she's trying to climb up a couch and she's struggling, she's help. You can do it. Keep trying. And then she does it and say, woohoo, you did it. And then she'll say, I did it. It's so cute. She's 16 months old. So just like that, like confidence in herself. It's really inspiring, really cute to see.
Yeah.
And some other things, I think asking what I've gained, I think it probably just comes back down to confidence. Is my self-efficacy in myself is much higher in that I can do hard things that I don't know how to do. Right. Things that you've never experienced before. Motherhood's the prime example of that. Every stage of motherhood looks so different. Right. And every mother is going through it for the first time, regardless of how many kids you have. Every child is so different. And so I think especially now, pregnant with my second, I feel so much more prepared mentally to be like, okay, I have no idea what's coming, but I kind of know what's coming, and I've seen myself pivot, and I've seen myself grow, and even in moments where I haven't been super proud of myself, I've also recognized that it's really hard times. Yeah. And I've survived every hard day. Yeah. So I think those are honestly my biggest takeaways from my identity changing, because it didn't take very long for me to try to reintegrate things that I knew would bring me joy back into motherhood. That was something that I'd worked with my therapist quite extensively with before I had Poppy, was how do I maintain my sense of self? Like, not just like my identity, but like have things where I'm not just so engrossed in somebody else's life, where I can step away and my brain can turn off for a minute. Yeah. And so I think I was 4 months postpartum and I joined an orchestra and chorus. So I was doing music. I was really involved in like my church volunteering and stuff like that. We had women's organizations and youth organizations that I was part of. So again, that like community outreach where I was focusing on others and not myself. Yeah. And granted, like that's not everybody's experience, but I knew going into it that would keep me grounded. Right. And it did. It really did. And it's continued to change over the last year and a half. But I think that conversation with my therapist right at the beginning, talking about what was important to me about the things that I was doing, was super impactful. So I would encourage any mother out there, whether you already have kids or whether you're preparing for kids, to ask yourself what it is in your life that really grounds you, it gives you passion, like why, deep down, why it is that you do what you do. Because it could look surface level, but really there's some deeper reasons for doing it. And so especially, I'm rambling now, sorry, but especially as a fitness professional, a lot of people like go to the gym because they want to look good. They want to change their body in a certain way. They want to feel athletic, Well, when you go through parenthood, especially, I think those priorities kind of change a little bit. A lot of people still want to change the way they look. But for me, especially going in and being pregnant, it's like, well, I'm not going to go looking to look toned or like toned or like look super shredded or be super fit because I'm growing a baby. Like
your abs are slowly disappearing every day, no matter how hard you work.
My belly button is turning into a chasm again. I noticed I could see it through
so weird leggings.
And being okay with that and be like, I'm here to move my body and to feel better physically and mentally. And so again, like coming back to your why, like some people come to the gym to feel good or to look good. But if you want that habit to continue, you have to look at deeper reasons for it. And you have to find those deeper reasons for it. And so, so that's my long tangent on that. But I want to reflect the same questions back to you because I'm curious. Well, we were talking about like all the dance and stuff, but I want to hear like what other things.
I think for me, one thing that's changed is the value I place on my time. Like I just have such a low tolerance for people who are going to waste my time. Yeah. And a lower tolerance too for people who are not going to like pay me what I'm worth for my time.
That's valid.
Like if I'm agreeing to do any sort of work, for other people, there has to be a fair monetary exchange. Like, I'm not going to work for anything less than what I'm worth anymore.
Yeah.
Whereas before I had a baby, I was like, I'd accept being underpaid all the time. Mm-hmm. Like, absolutely not now.
Well, especially also maybe because like you're like, what else am I going to do? Did you feel like that? You're like, well, I'm getting paid.
I
like,
definitely feel like it was more of just like allowing other people to convince me that that's all that I was worth.
Interesting.
You know? Whereas like now it's like, absolutely not. Like, I'm not going to like...
You know what you bring to the table.
Exactly.
That's so cool.
And I also think too, I feel like I'm still working on this, but I want to say like my capacity to hold things, like my capacity to like manage my life has gone up. You know?
Like you're more efficient?
Yeah.
Or
yes.
or you can kind of like, you feel like you can juggle more.
Like I feel like I'm capable of juggling more now than I was before I had a baby.
Cool.
You know?
Yeah.
And I feel like... yeah, I feel like I'm just like moving into a bigger chapter of my life. That's you know, like I feel like whatever's coming next is like I'm feeling now more like I want to intentionally create a community versus just like accepting that the communities I find myself in.
Yeah.
You know?
Totally. Well, it's one of the things that we felt in the last year. I think that's an extension of us kind of moving past like the survival stages of like early childhood.
Yeah.
Motherhood.
Yeah. Yeah, like I think I'm moving into now like a place in my life where I feel like I can be more intentional with like what I'm doing and who I'm doing it with.
That's awesome.
Versus like I think before, I think part of it had to do with having such a break from having a structure also. Because I think up until I had a baby, I was always within structured environments where I was finding community. Mm-hmm. You know, whether that was like at school or like dancing growing up or working at various jobs. It was like I was finding friendship in all of those places.
Where it was partially built already for you.
Yeah, where it was partially built already for me. And I was just like connecting with the people that were in those spaces in that point in time. Whereas now, like, I feel like I am wanting to be more intentional with like who I am building relationships with, you know? Mm-hmm. And not to say I'm not always going to be kind to people I work with or the people that are just naturally in my environment.
Of course. And
like I still want to connect with those people as well, but I think now more of my focus is going to be more intentional on like just who
the energy and the what you're bringing into your life now.
Yes, exactly.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and I think that's been a big change for me too. It's just like, I mean, we talked about this in the friendship dynamics episode, but like just how that changes, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you feel like it's because a little bit you recognize that there's an extension of yourself now? So like whatever your energy is intaking, it's also bringing back home.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel, I just feel like in general, I feel like I just have the capacity to be a bigger, better version of myself. And I feel like I'm like starting to see that potential for that.
I love that.
You know, whereas I think before I had a kid, I just was like blind to that.
Yeah.
Or I kind of knew it was there, but like didn't trust that I could like take the steps to get where I wanted to go.
Yeah. You know what's so cool about this, and it's like giving me chills a little bit, is that this is something that like you can instigate if you're childless. Like everyone can kind of grow and become this newer, empowered version of themselves. But I feel like there's something totally unique to becoming a mom and experiencing that.
Yeah. And I think for me, it was the catalyst I needed to like get out of some of the old patterns I was in that like I wouldn't have gotten out of any other way.
Yeah.
You know? Yeah. Like I think
the motivation is just different.
Yeah. Like I think had I not got pregnant with Arden, I probably would have like stayed at the job I was at before. And I probably wouldn't have ended up moving to where we moved, which meant that like going back to that job made absolutely no sense at all. And like, I also don't think it would have caused me to like reflect on yeah, like kind of how I was using work to numb out and like not taking the steps to go where I said I wanted to go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like I feel like for years leading up to having a kid, I was always talking about like, well, I mean, I had tried to launch a podcast prior to and did do.
It was really good.
Yeah, but then it's like I just didn't trust that it was going to go somewhere and just got swept up in work and was like, well, this is giving me a paycheck now. Like,
I totally did the same thing. I did some solo coaching. I started my own business and did the same thing. I got overrun by, because I was trying to do that and then working full time. I was just like, oh, whatever, I'll just do like my 9 to 5 and that's good enough. And then I'd come home and just chill.
Yeah, and now I have a kid and I'm like, working a 9 to 5 sounds like a nightmare and I might want to figure out something else.
If it works for you, it works for you. But for us, it ain't working for us. Totally. What I'm loving about this episode, and I hope that it translates to our listeners, is just like a sense of optimism.
Yeah.
And which is really cool because when we talked about it before, it's almost been like a little heavy.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show that like nothing is permanent.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't that long ago. So we've talked about this continuously.
Yeah. And I think, like you said, there's a bit of an element of grief that goes through it when it's like, I feel like when I gave birth, I was reborn or I died and then have been like gradually going through my own like rebirth process after, you know?
Yeah.
Of like becoming a new version of myself.
Oh, there you go. That's like the key phrase. I wish I had looked up the definition before we started this. Matrescence. Matrescence? How did we decide it's...
Yeah, I don't know.
Matrescence, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
M-A-T-R...
I think we said it was matrescence because it's like adolescence, but matrescence is like coming into your motherhood.
Yes, exactly. I love that. Coming into your motherhood. And it's this rebirth, renewal, new person of yourself.
Yeah.
And so I think that's like the perfect way to wrap up, honestly, is just the sense of optimism. Yes, it's going to be hard. Yes, there's going to be some grief. Yes, there's going to be a lot of shifts in who you are. But if you can go into it thinking, I'm growing to this new person of who I could potentially like really love and really enjoy. I think going into motherhood with the air of, I want to enjoy this phase of my life. Yeah. And enjoy all the phases of my children's lives.
And how can I create it to be what I want it to be?
Yes, is so important. And so taking some time to really delve into what that looks like for you. And it's going to change as things go on. But trying to seek out your support system so that those things can be possible. You know, finding what works for you. If it doesn't, pivot. Yeah. And all the things, find people that have similar views as you and are trying to do this all together. And I think that's a perfect segue to the end of our podcast today.
Yeah, that was a good episode. I'm glad we had to re-record this 4 times because I don't know if we would have recorded it had the other ones not worked out.
I hope so. I hope this was...
And I really hope that when we turn these cameras off, all the audio's there and all the visual finished recording.
Yes. So thank you so much, you guys, for joining us again today. Much love. We'll see you.